it's not like, finance you can just go to school for and do an internship and you get a job, and it's all relatively similar to what you're learning in school, or at least like some of the foundations apply. And I feel that B2B marketers, it also changes so rapidly that there is a hunger for people to learn from each other.
Welcome back to Avidly Talks. This is a mostly marketing, sales and HubSpot focused podcast, and today we're talking about community with Danielle Messler, now Parker. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you. I still haven't made the big LinkedIn name change yet. I'm still a little nervous because everyone knows me by my maiden name, so I don't know how to make that shift.
Well, the similarities continue. The car trouble I mentioned today, which is why I'm recording at home. Basically, one of the roots of the trouble is my wife, we realised, hadn't updated her driving licence. It still had her maiden name, so we've had some paperwork stuff to try and sort as we traced things back and realised, actually, we kind of need to let the driving authorities know that we've changed names.
I'm like right in the middle. I've done like the big federal thing in the US, the Social Security, which is like the first thing you have to do, and then everything cascades down after that. But I haven't done like my driver's license yet, or my passport.
When was the wedding?
Or any of the big ones. It was in August, the end of August, and it was actually in Dublin. So we were over
cool.
across the pond. Yeah.
Have you got family from Dublin?
Nope, I just love it. We both love it. It was great. We had about 45 people, and we just had it in this like great little pub in Dublin.
Nice.
And it was a dream.
Plenty of Guinness, drunk.
So much Guinness, and we actually it was fun. We got the little one of the things you can do is they have this. It's almost like a printer that they can put images on the top of the foam. So the kind of default one anytime ordered a Guinness was a picture of our dog, or there was like a little QR code you could scan and upload, and people could upload any picture they wanted. So we had a lot of friends doing like their kids or selfies. It was really fun.
Brilliant. That is cool. I was going to put you on the spot and mention how we finally got you on the podcast. So we had Dave on as an early guest.
And now I can apologize in person because I didn't even make the connection. So I had a LinkedIn post about, we get a ton of pitches for the Exit 5 podcast. And that morning I had just gotten so many that were mostly from PR agencies that like aren't done well. They're like, we have a book coming out about like psychology and like, I don't know, just things not even related to marketing, and they're just spamming kind of all of the top podcasts. So I had this post about, what makes a really good pitch, and then you had asked me a couple of weeks before to come on this podcast, and I was like, yeah, of course. And then you commented and were like, what if I want you on my podcast? And I was like, yeah, follow up. And you were like, ouch. And I was like, oh my god, I didn't even make the connection.
But you were like, people who follow up are such a pain in the ass. And I was like,
no,
how long should you wait? And you were like, months. And I was like, oh, okay, never mind.
No. I totally meant, I know, I felt like such a jerk afterwards because I totally didn't mean it. I didn't even realize. So I also have ADD, in case you couldn't tell. So sometimes I need those pings, like because I'm totally
a bit mean for me, because in the comments on your post, I had twigged that you'd clearly not made the connection that we'd already chatted a few times in the DMs. But I know how it is, especially with sort of these bot programs that are taking it that level. You used to be able to spot the automated messages anyway, but they're just that little bit more sort of persistent now, aren't they?
Yeah, and LinkedIn makes it like impossible to have an inbox, like, and I don't want to be that person that's like, I get so many messages.
Yeah, no, it's not even that, is it? It's just the 2 or 3 just of, I don't know, say you get 3, 2 of them will be just like you say, that generic sort of loosely correct criteria, but not quite right, but they're just written in the longer way that is more human. Anyway,
so you like get tricked, human. But
something that is human is the Exit 5 community, yeah?
Yes,
We're talking about community today. So tell us first of all,
Full of humans.
What is it? What is it?
Yeah, Exit 5. So if you are not familiar, which some of your listeners might not be. It is a community, above all, for B2B marketers. So we say community, but what does that actually mean? It's not a Slack group. We host it in a platform called Circle, which you have to log into, but it is very active, and it is full of different channels of conversations around different things around marketing. You can pop in and ask questions. We have community events. Matt, our team member who runs a lot of the community, he does a great job putting together a program with, certain, asynchronous, like Ask Me Anythings. Like we had Tass Bober did a landing page audit for community members. So for about a day, you could submit your landing page and she would give you an audit. She ended up doing like 40 of them. She said she was only going to do 10, but she was like, I was just having so much fun. So there's different things like that. So really it's kind of like a professional community for B2B marketers. I'll just sum it up succinctly as that.
How's Circle? That was a competitor of mine of a project I used to work on. We were building our own community space a few years ago, and Circle got this huge investment wave and really kicked on. So how's Circle as a platform?
Yeah, we really like it. The switch was... it was before I came on, but it used to be, Dave used to run it out of Facebook, which then we switched over to Circle just to have it, not on Facebook, which has its own challenges. But we've really liked it. I've been in a ton of communities in my marketing career and just, not even marketing related, sometimes just startups or, different things. A lot of them have been hosted in Slack, which I feel like sounds great in theory, but once you kind of hit a certain threshold, it's just a mess.
Do you not find as well that sort of the Slack you're in for your employer, that's the only Slack I end up checking. I don't check the other 5 down the side of the toolbar.
Yeah, I never do. This is like one of the first times I've ended up signing out of like every other Slack besides Exit 5. Which feels really nice, but I used to have kind of that sidebar that was like, all these different communities and little groups I was in, and I just never ended up checking them because obviously like you work out of Slack and yeah.
To go right back, Circle is a community hosting platform and Exit 5 use that, so that's what your own space for this community to live. Is it in browser? Is it an app? How does it work?
Yeah. It's in browser, so you have to, go to the URL, which I think that's why a lot of people choose Slack initially, because the thought process is like, oh, everyone's in Slack already, just do it there. But I like Circle, just the platform I just have it like bookmarked on my browser. Obviously, I'm an employee of Exit 5, so I have a little bit more incentive to go in there, but it is really active. And that was one of the things when I was interviewing at Exit 5 I looked for, because I was like, what's one of the biggest risks of a community company are people actually checking out the community, or is it kind of one of those dead Slack spaces where it's just the organizers using like @here and @channel to spam you with their own content? But so yeah, Circle is an in-browser kind of platform where it's nice because there's like these different spaces you can find. Their search function is actually really great, and then there's also kind of these different libraries of content you can build too, so that's like part of the search. So we have one for like, we post all of our like live session replays there, the recordings from our events. People can add their own templates, so it becomes kind of this like growing body of community work. Which is nice.
The communities for B2B marketers specifically. Why do you think B2B marketers need a community space? Why are people buying into that?
Yeah, I think, so kind of going back to how even Exit 5 got started. So our founder, Dave Gerhardt, he is a pretty well-known B2B marketer. He was one of the first marketers at Drift and also Privy, and then he started kind of his podcast, which attracted a lot of people because, and it's our tagline, and it sounds cheesy at Exit 5, but it's true, is like, no one goes to school for B2B marketing. I mean, I didn't go to school to anything related to marketing, so I think that like extra applies to me, but a lot of people who even did go to school for marketing didn't find that a lot of things specific to B2B were taught. So you learn a lot with experience on the job, and depending on the type of company you're at, the industry, like what your team makeup looks like, there may or may not be someone to learn from. And that's how you're getting a majority of your learnings here, is through communities like this, content, people posting on LinkedIn, learning how to do things. That's actually how I found Dave, because I, kind of fell into B2B, or rather like talked my way into it, B2B marketing, from a content role. And I knew nothing. And I was like, okay, I need resources. I need places to look. There's not, now there's a good amount of books you can read, but sometimes it's easier to just hop on a podcast that's like hyper specific. And that's how I found, I think it was called like Dave Gerhardt Marketing Group at the time, now Exit 5. And there was a couple of others out there too. But I just think that, it's not really something that, it's not like, finance you can just go to school for and do an internship and you get a job, and it's all, relatively similar to what you're learning in school, or at least like some of the foundations apply. And I feel that B2B marketers, it also changes so rapidly that there is a hunger for people to learn from each other. So it's really, I think, fulfilling a need for community and peer learning.
Is it mostly in-house marketers who are members of the community then?
We have a good mix, I would say. I would say about half and half, maybe a little bit more in-house marketers. So we have CMOs, we have VPs, directors, heads of, all the way down to, like marketing managers and people just getting started, maybe associates, things like that. And then we also do have a good amount of so there's a distinction too. We have in-house marketers that work at agencies. So like they are the in-house marketer at a certain agency. Yes, exactly. So we have that. And then we also do have some agency, owners or co-founders that are in there, but it's not.
Is that your dog?
Yes, he's popping in.
He's doing the same as my dog.
Yeah, he's got his toy. I don't know if there he is. Popped right in. That's Hamilton.
Good, Hamilton. Good bonus dog content. Reggie's down there. Maybe he could sense him. That's why he was scratching around.
He got his little fox toy, and he's probably going to start squeaking it in a few minutes because he's, gone 10 minutes without attention.
The reason I ask about in-house sort of members is because when I speak to a lot of our own, not the community in your sense, but people who come to our events and subscribe to our newsletter and things, and our clients as well, I think one of the big things that B2B in-house marketers have is a sense of isolation. You're the only marketing team at the business, and often a team of one or maybe two. Mm-hmm. So I think that's. Do you pick that up? A lot of people just looking for that connection to just, I don't know. Do they bounce ideas off each other? What is it they're getting out of it, as well as just camaraderie, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, especially kind of and it spans like the whole spectrum of B2B, but if you kind of take one section of that, which is a large section, is like SaaS and startups, which, as you pointed out, are a lot of smaller teams. It's like one or two people, or maybe one in-house marketer working with contractors. There is a sense of isolation, and also that like we have a whole channel called like Gut Check, which is used quite frequently because you don't have that like in-house like
What's the
other
rules
marketers.
On that channel?
So it's not promotional. It's more like, hey, I'm thinking of starting a webinar program. Like, here's what I'm thinking around it, and here's the basics of our business. And you're asking other marketers, like, what do you think? Does this sound directionally correct? And it really fosters a lot of conversations around like, okay, so like why this program? And they'll kind of call out, oh yeah, I think that's correct. Or, maybe you haven't considered XYZ, which you can't, a lot of times in-house, you can't really do because either you're the only marketer, doesn't get marketing, it's a small team, maybe
the answer is you're the expert, you decide.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And like maybe, the CEO is, I've worked with a lot of CEOs, and sometimes you want to kind of form your own opinion before like presenting something, or, you don't want to go to the CEO and be like, is this a good idea? kind of thing. So yeah, I think it fulfills that need. It also, I feel like a lot of marketers like to teach what they're doing too, or like, I think in general, the people that are attracted to the community in general are pretty ambitious and curious. Like they want to learn, they want to get better, they want to grow. And with that comes a lot of sharing, like, ooh, hey, look at this like cool thing I did that worked. Like maybe it'll work for someone like you. So there's also that kind of like reciprocity and generosity in the community too. So it's a good double-edged, no, that's not what I'm looking for. There's a lot of give and take in the community, so that's good.
What are some other popular channels? So you got the gut check. What other kind of things do people really like vibe off?
Yeah, so we actually just started a dedicated AI channel, which is already like kind of getting a lot of traction because I think there's a lot of interest around AI, and everyone's saying like it's going to revolutionize marketing, and a lot of marketers are inherently skeptical, and they're like, okay, but how? Like, how are you using it? So that's
how are they using it at the minute? What's the uptake? What's the real on the ground sort of adoption?
Yeah, I think so. I can speak to what we're doing at Exit 5. A lot of my use case has been, and I'm going to say content, but not in the sense that, I go into ChatGPT and I'm like, okay, I need an SEO article on how to build a community, write it for me. What I use it for personally a lot, and a lot of our team uses it, is we have this library of transcripts from our own podcast. So we've done over 200 episodes. We've done more live sessions and webinars and events and even community discussions. So I find it really helpful for getting more out of that content. So like when I'm writing our weekly newsletter, I'll find a transcript, I'll have it kind of parse out some of the things. I have a bunch of prompts and kind of brand upload voices that I've done, find it, say like, hey, what are the, 3 top takeaways from this transcript, this conversation for B2B marketing leaders? And it'll, tell me a little bit, and then I'll say,
and
okay,
what
like,
tool is this?
I'm just using ChatGPT.
Okay, cool.
Right now. I think that's, one of the other things we talk about a lot internally is, all these different tools out there. I'm just very basic using ChatGPT right now, which is great. I know it. And then just kind of use a series of prompts to help kind of get that information. It knows my writing style, which is great. And it'll help me go from like 0 to 1. And then the human part is like really in the editing, making sure things make sense.
Do you use the voice chat functionality?
I don't actually. Dave does a ton. Is it?
Yeah, so I started playing with it a few weeks ago whenever my son discovered it. Said, oh, I can chat to it. I was like, oh, that's been released, cool. But yeah, do you know when you're just, say, using that blog article example or an email newsletter, those links and sources will be out there, but you can just describe the content you want in more depth. It's just quicker than typing it. And you can give it the thorough brief, you can give it your instructions. So I want this post aimed at this persona, blah, blah, blah. And like you say, it's got the memory. It knows your brand voice. It knows who you're targeting generally, but you can narrow it down, give it extra context. Don't draft it yet. Give me your structure before you draft it, etc., etc. 5 minutes of chatting probably did me an hour and a half's research time in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you can just spend 30 minutes sort of actually making it sound good and in your style and so on. So use the voice thing for that process is a real game changer.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I should do that. I think another thing I've used it for that is kind of a tactical, like helpful thing is, so we're starting to launch, we're calling the product articles. It's kind of going to be our version of a blog. Again, taking all of these insights from all of these interviews with B2B marketing leaders and really starting to build a home for that on our webpage. And one of the things I did recently was, we got to have a point of view of what makes a good article. What are the qualifications? So I went and found probably, 10 to 15 examples of what I like, what good looks like. And then I uploaded them all to ChatGPT and said, here are examples of what good looks like. Can you kind of reverse engineer a creative brief that picks out the patterns and describes, the structure, the writing style, the, different points that they hit. And now I have a brief that kind of is taken from these examples of things that I love that I think are really valuable to help guide any sort of drafting as well. So I think that that's another kind of more tactical thing that marketers have been using AI for, at least this marketer.
That's brilliant. Give us that tactical advice again then. I love that tip.
Yeah.
Just give us that again in brief.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that ChatGPT is really good at is kind of finding the patterns between different things. So for an example, the one that I'm using, the tactical tip is I want to create a brief for all of our articles. So I've found, 10 to 15 examples of what I think good looks like from, maybe it's long form newsletters or other blogs, and I've uploaded those and said, hey, can you write me a brief based on, or kind of reverse engineer a brief for me that describes what these articles or, examples do. What's the tone that they write in? What do they always include? What are kind of the high points that they hit? What's the standard? So now we have a full document that's like, what does good look like? Like, what makes a good article? That I then use to upload when we're drafting our own. So I'll say, here's a transcript on ABM. Can you please help me turn it into an article using this voice and tone example, and make sure it adheres to this brief of what a good article is. And it gives it these guidelines and guardrails based on real examples of things that we like. And that has had a dramatic effect on the quality of the outputs we've gotten from AI.
I think so. AI in the community at large that you facilitate. So how are people embracing AI tools? I'm in a similar place as you, largely using ChatGPT. Obviously, HubSpot AI being a HubSpot user. But what's the community out there doing? Are they... Hamilton's in the background. Are they sort of allowed to use it? Are they skeptical? Are people dipping their toe in? Or is it a mix? Like, where's the market at?
I think it's a good mix. And I think that's why we actually had a lot of requests for a channel like this. So that's kind of why we implemented it. Again, it's very new. So, it's not something that's been going on for months and months. So we're learning too. But I think there's kind of like three kinds of people participating so far. Some are like, hey, like, I know this is a big thing. I just don't know where to get started. So they're there to kind of learn what other marketers are doing as potential use cases that they can then take into their companies. Then there's like kind of, I would say, like the power users that are like, I have tried every single tool out there. Here's the things that I'm doing. And they're really like eager to share. And then there's also conversations around people, being like, hey, would this be possible with AI? This is something I think could work, but like it's just not quite getting what I wanted. Does anyone have any input? So that's been really great. I think one of the things that we haven't done at Exit 5 because it's not like, totally our use case, but I think would help a lot of marketers. And I learned this from Kyle Coleman, who is the CMO at Copy AI. So obviously like he's deep in the AI thing. But one of the things I found that is really cool for them that they're doing is they have just like an integration with Gong that records, all of their sales calls. So, whenever their AEs or BDRs are on calls with clients, they have this workflow. So the recording goes into this workflow, and then it basically takes, the conversation and it pulls out directly from the potential customer or client's, phrasing and words, like what are their biggest pain points and what are they looking to solve? And then, it's this whole workflow they've spent a lot of time building. But basically then it kind of creates this database, this Notion table of major pain points they're seeing across all of these customer calls. And it drafts, blog posts or other things, but then the sales team can really easily use it to, do outreach or speak to other customers who have had those pain points. So it's really creating this database of like customer driven conversations in, minutes. And that is something that I think marketers have been doing for their sales teams, especially in more of a sales led motion where it's really manual, right? You have to like listen to those conversations, you kind of find those common threads, and it's a huge help to the sales team. And this is one of those things where it's really helping like speed up that process and that feedback loop and find those insights quicker. And that's helping marketers respond to customer needs faster and also help them help their sales teams in a more genuine way. So that's one of the use cases. I know it's like Kyle's the CMO of Copy AI, but I was really impressed by seeing that kind of workflow that they're using and helping their customers use too. Not sponsored. We don't even use Copy AI. Again, I use ChatGPT, but it's very cool to see. But again, like we don't have like sales calls. It's a bit of a different motion, but I can see how that would help in-house marketers.
100%. It's taken. There's so many places in the sort of marketer and sales roles. So many places where there's admin work. If you can get these tools in place and spend a bit of time setting them up, the insights are deeper and faster if you can get them producing things. So you've talked about sort of reverse engineering briefs. You could have sat there and done that in a few hours, or you could do some copy and pasting and have a near enough ready brief version. it's just saving hours here, there, and everywhere, isn't it? Yeah. What else are people talking about? What are the other big channels that people are taking part in?
Yeah, we actually just started another kind of product. So we have like the Exit 5 community, and then we also just launched what we're calling like CMO Club. So it's marketing leaders, it's like director, VP, CMO level, and that's another kind of private channel. So right now, a lot of the conversations are around, budgeting and headcount and planning looking ahead to 2025. So that's like a huge conversation in that specific channel now.
And you wouldn't, you perhaps your team might be in the wider community, so you'd need a kind of safe space for talking about leadership things that might not come into fruition. So
exactly. Yeah. And we also have these kind of monthly, we're calling them like marketer therapy sessions, where we'll bring in like a top CMO. Like we just had Kip from HubSpot come in and lead one of those sessions and had people show up live, and it's like a closed conversation. You can ask those kinds of questions that you can get that you probably wouldn't ask internally, and talk about those problems in a very candid sort of way, because you're not worried someone from your team is on there, your CEO is listening in and forming their own kind of opinions about you as a marketer. So that's been hugely helpful as well.
Nice. And just before I move on from the community, it's I guess it's chat, text, posting based. It's like a Facebook group or a Reddit or a forum.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's forum based. So like we have those different channels, which kind of segments off by like topic, and then there's also like a general discussion one. We try to make it as kind of easy to navigate as possible, so you're not like going in and overwhelmed by like, oh, there's 1,000 channels and I have to feel. So they're pretty broad, but that's on purpose, so that it's not like everything gets its own kind of space. And then you can kind of just join in the conversation. They're text threads. So we have those. Yeah. And then there's, chat. One of the other things we do is set up, there's monthly, we use a platform called Matcha that sets you up one-on-one with another marketer just to kind of network and meet. So that's been really popular as well. So people have ended up, meeting new marketing friends that way.
That's good. That's good. What's the mood sort of for the new year? What are the kind of you alluded to it earlier about the AI coming for our jobs kind of feel, not really being there. People sound like they're being a bit more realistic. What are people excited about for the new year? And things have changed so much in the past 12, 18 months. How are people tackling 2025?
Yeah, I think that's obviously a huge topic right now, just because of the time of year and where we are. So there's a lot of people, talking about what should their resourcing look like next year? How are they going to be using something like AI? How should they be augmenting some of their processes that way? Lots of people talking about also using freelancers and different outsourcing platforms for certain other things too, which I think is a kind of, it's not a new trend, but I think it's something that is more integrated into your kind of marketing stack these days as a marketing leader. Like we said, you might not get budget for a full-time writer, but you can find a freelancer to work with that does this like very specific thing. And I've done that in my marketing career as well. Another thing we've seen come up a lot is, especially in B2B, is kind of a shift in the way marketers are thinking about field marketing and events. Maybe a shift from, getting the big booth at a SaaStr or another trade show to doing something more like small client dinners in a city where that is going on. And again, it depends on your ICP and who you're trying to actually market to. But I think we're just finding a lot of companies and a lot of marketing teams aren't getting this, the ROI from spending, $250,000 to get this huge booth, and finding a lot more value in those like one-on-one intimate conversations, maybe doing an experience together, something like that, or even hosting like smaller user conferences where it's 200 people or less. So I think there is a shift there too, because as we've come out of COVID, there's been that want for connection. You know, we've talked about the community online, but also that community feel offline too. So there's a lot of talk around that as well. And one person who does this really well is Natalie Taylor at Capsule. They're a video editing program program company, and they do these series of dinners that have been really successful for them.
I think there's a sort of, I don't know what the word is, full circle almost to people wanting to be part of the B2B community, marketing community, to get tips, and things move so fast. But also, I'm like you, didn't go to university to learn marketing, but the principles that you do learn if you do study that way, so those principles are still true. Human connection, trust, relationship, brand, these things are super key.
I think on that kind of point, there's another trend which I think is, you know, moving in the right direction, kind of changing from, I'm going to try to articulate this well, but it's people doing this are a lot smarter than me, it's shifting more towards from like super granular attribution of like, I have to be able to track every single dollar I spent and calculate the ROI, to being okay taking more of those bets, those brand bets that, you know, you can measure brand, but you're not going to be able to measure every dollar in the same way. And there's kind of this kind of shift back, I think, from that like overly concerned with tracking every single dollar, back towards the middle a little bit, where it's like, okay, we track what we can track in that way, but also we realize that this brand investment is important and we can't track it the same way, but that doesn't mean that it's not important.
How are people out there in your community sort of dealing with that? Because I get that and I totally agree, but that's easy for me working at a marketing agency to get people to understand that. But if I was a B2B widget manufacturer, I imagine it'd be more, well, I've had 15 years of knowing where every penny went, and if I put one in, I get 5 out. Why can't I do that anymore? How are people tackling that?
That's a really great question. I think in general, there's a lot of really great and hot discussions around this within even our community. And then of course, I'm sure you've seen on LinkedIn. I think it's having like a mix, right? There is a certain portion of your marketing activities where you are going to be able to track that and say, you know, I put $1 in, I got 5 out, and here's what's driving this part of pipeline. And here's what I'm doing on the brand side. Here's the hypothesis. Here's how I'm measuring it. I think a lot of it is around how you're communicating it to your leadership team, how you're speaking their language and saying, you know, okay, this is what we're doing and this is the intended result, and I'm okay taking a bet here, and here's what I'm doing to mitigate the risks. And I think a lot of the conversations are around kind of that internal education, especially as you know, the CFO gets more involved trying to, you know, measure those granular things. We just had a panel in Austin actually last month that spoke a lot about this. That was really great. And one of the CMOs there was talking about how they've started having a better relationship with their CFO in terms of how they're presenting information and saying like, I'm not now granularly measuring every single program. Like I'm looping things together so that I can say like, okay, here's our web program. And that encompasses a bunch of things. And you can show the ROI there, but it's not like down to the, you know, line item, which is what a CFO will pick apart. But you know it's working as a CMO. And I'm probably not articulating her point well at all. But yeah, I think around it is a lot of around internal education as well as you as a marketer. Like we are marketers, we're professional communicators. So you need to be able to present why that's important and how you're measuring success. And it might not be, I spent $10 on brand and we got $50 in return from that. But maybe it's, you know, we can trace this to when we started this campaign, our close rates went from X to Y. Our, you know, inbound increase XYZ based on this like incrementality. So I think that's a big part of the conversation.
The route into your community, I guess, is sort of a newsletter that if people want to get a flavour of Exit 5 and the content you're putting out, which is fantastic. I thought email was dead, so why are Exit 5 doing a newsletter?
Email is not dead. I think I've said this before. I think like everything's going to be dead at some point. I think like something gets popular, right? And then like all of the worst versions of it become more numerous and everyone's like, oh, it's dead. Cold email's dead because everyone can spam with AI right now. I think the best versions of it still survive, but that's just my tiny little rant on the like email is dead thing. We treat our newsletter like its own product. Like it is a content product to me. And I have certain standards around that as you would a product. And we stick to those. So I think that's one of those things that it's like, it's been worth it for us. It's not just kind of a distribution tactic, which I think a lot of newsletters can be, especially when written by brands. It's, we got to write a newsletter.
What's your strategy for the newsletter then? What's the aim for it and how are you going about it?
Yeah, so my kind of bar for content in the newsletter is, obviously I'm writing to B2B marketing leaders. They're ambitious. They want to learn. They're hungry for things that'll make them better at their jobs. So every single issue has at least one thing that you can go do and be better at your job or something for you to learn without leaving the email. You don't have to click out. You just read it. You can save it. You can come back to it later. And it's all kind of curated. We're all marketers at Exit 5, but our strategy is really like we curate a lot of what the experts are out there doing right now, and we help bring that knowledge to you. So today's issue was from someone who actually teaches, marketing leadership, and it was around managing a team. So there was 3 like very strategic and tactical things that you could do to be a better leader. One of them was talking around like, here are the questions you can ask to set expectations together. So if you have a new hire, you want to make sure they succeed on your team. You sit down, you can say like, what does success look like for you? Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Do we agree? You're kind of co-creating, and then you're on the same page. So that's just like one of those examples. So they're strategic and tactical things that you can take away and do. So that's kind of the thought process behind it, or at least my standard for the content.
So your newsletter then is offering value in the email, no clicks.
Yes.
Why is that important?
I think it does a couple of things. It helps establish trust, because you're getting something in your inbox. My inbox is a freaking mess, and over time, you start to realize like, oh, I liked reading this email the last time I got it, and you start to look forward to it. So it's really kind of like habit building there, and it's also, I don't even know how you would phrase this, but it is relationship building of staying within the email versus like constantly linking out. Whereas like you're not spending time there. You're not actually building a relationship. It's just kind of like a link distribution system. I think kind of establishes this routine, this habit, this relationship. I also like to optimize some of it for replies. Like I like to have conversations with the subscribers.
What's your key metric for your newsletter? I really keep an eye on replies at the moment. I think that's the marker for me.
Yeah, I think replies are, we measure all of the standard things like click-through rate and that, opens to a certain extent just to make sure things aren't, drastically falling one way or the other. But replies, I think, are the biggest.
Do they go straight to your inbox?
We have a shared inbox. It's high at Exit 5 because, we get a certain number of replies that are different people on the team handle it. But I do reply to, I'm going to say like almost everyone. Sometimes I just miss them. You've seen me in my LinkedIn inbox. But we do really try to reply
and
to
then
like
publicly shame them. And yeah.
Exactly, yes.
So your newsletter tips, run me through. So it's no click, it's curated advice, and it's strategical and tactical.
Yes.
Like it. What's your tips for people who are starting or reviving or want to improve their newsletter for 2025?
Yeah, I think newsletters are very near and dear to my heart. I think the first thing is like having a foundation of why you're writing it. Like, why are you actually writing this? Are you using it as a relationship building tool? Yes, you should be. It should not be a distribution tactic, to get your content out there. that's where I think a lot of newsletters fail. But you have to really think of like the one person you're writing to and why should they read this, and keep this like on top of the document you're writing it in. And really keep that in focus. Like, why is someone going to want to read this? And be a little bit brutally honest with yourself. Like, like if you wouldn't read this as the ICP or the person that you're writing to, like no one else is going to. No one's going to care. So I think also having that like kind of North Star in mind is the foundation you have to work with. Step 2 is just getting the reps in, like commit to it. Say like, I'm going to publish 10 of these. And I feel like it really takes 10 before you get into a good rhythm of like knowing like, okay, this format works, this style works, this is what I want to do, and kind of have it be like, have a point of view and a format that you're writing from. Don't just say like, I'm going to write a newsletter today and, put a bunch of crap in there. Like ours is, hey, this is for B2B marketers. This is going to help you be smarter at B2B marketing, and it's curated by the community. So having set those guardrails, I think, is super important. And those are the really like foundational things, I would say, to get started.
Nice. And I think, lastly, what should a B2B marketer stop doing in 2025?
Ooh, that is a really good question. What should they stop doing? There's so many things popping into mind. I'm going to steal a piece of advice from Emily Kramer, who's the founder of Market One. She has coined this term that's called random acts of marketing, kind of when you're just doing things just to be productive, but they don't have any tie to your strategy or what you're actually trying to achieve. So again, a newsletter would be one of those that's just like, hey, let's just like start a newsletter and spam out a bunch of links. That's a random act of marketing. But if it's, we want to build a relationship with our prospects by providing valuable information, so we're going to use a newsletter to do that, that is not a random act of marketing. But I think that especially on smaller, overworked teams, there's a lot of that wheel spinning of like constantly working but making no progress. And if that's the feeling, like you're probably doing more random acts of marketing just to feel like you're getting stuff done versus taking a step back, being strategic, and looking at what you actually want to achieve.
And now is the perfect time to do that, at the turn of the year.
Perfect time.
Sign up to the newsletter. Honestly, Exit 5 newsletter is absolutely fantastic. Danielle, you
Thank you.
It's your fingers hitting the keyboard, right?
Yes. Yes.
Congrats. It's lovely.
Thank
it was
you.
in our brief, or my brief rather, for where we want our newsletter to reach. And we did the same thing of, here's some newsletters we like. Let's reverse engineer them. Yours was one. Great work. And also check out the community. If you are, in particular for me, I know this isn't your only demographic, but if you're an in-house marketer looking for that support, that gut check channel is just superb. And if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a comment or a 5-star review. Hit the follow button to get your future episodes straight in your feed, and make sure you sign up to the Exit 5 newsletter. See you next time. Thanks so much, Danielle.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye, Hamilton.
Hey, did you enjoy this episode? Then be sure to leave us a comment, a review, and hit that follow button. See you next episode.